Welcome to Profit Boss Radio, where successful women have paved the road to their own financial freedom. Each week, your host, Hillary Hendershot, financial coach, money mindset expert, and experienced wealth manager, will help you discover the keys to the wealth and peace of mind you want and deserve in her no-nonsense and authentic style. Starting right now.
Hello, hello, hello. This is Hillary Hendershot, your host. At Profit Boss Radio, I want you to know you ask and I deliver. I had posed the question in the private Facebook group, which you can get access to at hillaryhendershot.com/profitboss. I asked if you wanted to hear from Lauren Greutman, author of the Recovering Spender book, and you said yes. And here she is today. Lauren is the frugal living expert behind the popular money-saving blog, LaurenGreutman.com, formerly IamThatLady.com. At the age of 25, she and her husband Mark and their 4 children were in more than $40,000 of debt and were running a $1,000 per month deficit. They knew they needed to change, so they put together a budget, and 2 years later, they were debt-free. Since 2010, Lauren's been teaching busy moms how to budget, get out of debt, and live a life with financial independence. She has a passion for helping others learn how to achieve financial freedom. She's been featured on Nightline, The Today Show, Dr. Oz, Fox and Friends, Good Morning America, Nightline, Yahoo Finance, and many other national news outlets. She's the author of the newly released book, The Recovering Spender: How to Live a Happy, Fulfilled, and Debt-Free Life. To get a copy of Lauren's book, follow the links at hillaryhendershot.com/38 and enjoy today's interview. Lauren, welcome to Profit Boss Radio.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited. You're really the first guest of this type that I've had on the show. And I love what you're up to, and you're a media maven. So it's great. You're really doing some amazing things. And I can tell you're committed to your campaign and your vision. So would you go back in time with us just to start our conversation? Take us to that moment when you realized that you were in debt over your head. What were you doing? What was that like? What happened?
Yeah, so I was in debt up to my eyeballs, $40,000 to be exact, running a $1,000 deficit every single month. And I was really at my wit's end. I was so stressed out. Losing sleep at night. Around this time, I was married. I actually got married pretty young. We were 21 years old, me and my husband. And we had 1 child at the age of 24 is when we had our first child. Now we have 4. And so this kind of all came to head when I was 25 years old, when I realized that, we were in $40,000 with the debt. I couldn't pretend like it wasn't there anymore. And I just really wanted a different life for my family. We wanted more children. We wanted financial security. We wanted to be able to, do things like pay for our kids' college. But yet we were spending all of our savings. We were, even more in getting into such credit card debt. And so that's kind of where I was. This was back in 2005, 2006, around there, and just really stressed out and just wanted to crawl into a hole and just like snap my fingers and have everything change for me. So that was kind of where I was. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I know. Was there a particular trigger, or what put it over the edge for you?
What put it over the edge for me was when I had gone shopping one day, gone to the mall with one of my friends. And during that shopping trip, I spent, a few $100s on clothes that we didn't have, put it on a credit card. And when I got home, instead of bringing it inside, I kept it in the trunk of my car because I didn't want to fight with my husband over the purchase. So I left it there. And when he went to work the next day, I got it out of the car and I put it in the closet, took the tags off, and just hoped that he didn't notice.
Okay. So a little bit of financial infidelity there.
Yes. And so I think when I started doing that and seeing the things that were kind of coming up in my heart, that I realized that I didn't like doing that. Like, my marriage was way too important for me to have this financial infidelity. And so that's when I started to think about coming clean, and ultimately decided to come clean to my husband about all the money that I was spending and how much debt we were in, because I was handling the money back then. So that was like the breaking point for me.
Oh, so he didn't know.
He didn't know. Yep.
Okay. And how'd that conversation go?
It actually went fairly well as it could be. I came clean to him and just told him we were in, $40,000 worth of debt, and I needed help. I couldn't, I was bouncing checks. And at that time we were making a good living too. It wasn't like we were making little money. We were making a good living. We had an Audi and we had a custom built house and we had tons of nice stuff and a house full of beautiful furniture. So on the outside, we looked really, really good. So when I told him, he knew we had debt. He almost didn't want to know how much it was because he knew that I was spending money. And so when I told him, he wasn't shocked, but he definitely was like, okay, I forgive you. We gotta work on this, but we need to work on it together. It's not just me putting the numbers down. You got to stop spending money. And so that was like a turning point for me. I had to really decide if I was going to change.
Wow, Lauren, this guy sounds like a really good guy.
He is. He's a very, very good guy.
That is not the way most people would react, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, totally. Totally not. I feel like I got lucky in that sense.
Very good. So there you are, custom built house. You have an Audi, which is probably you own with a loan. I'm just assuming that.
Yep.
And then you really fully take stock. You lay the credit card bills out. You lay the auto loan bill out. And, you can probably leave the mortgage aside because that's quote unquote good debt, but you're looking at your consumer debt. And when you face the music, how did it feel?
Oh, horrible. It felt horrible. I felt like my life could have been over. There was no way for us to pay down our debt with where we were at that time. And I felt hopeless. And I think there's a lot of people, whether you make money or whether you don't make much money, that you can be in this situation. One thing happens and you're back to square one, right?
Yeah.
And we hadn't always been in debt, but we had just made some really stupid decisions. And that's kind of where we ended up.
So what did you change first?
First thing I changed was getting really real with myself. I needed to figure out that the money that I was spending was not equal to my value system. And so I think anybody at any financial level can relate to this, that you spend your money typically as a reflection of your values. And for me, my values were my family, financial security, faith, my marriage, but yet everything that I was doing and how I was spending my money was against everything that I believed in. If you had looked at my checkbook register, you would have thought that my values were Target and Starbucks and the mall, like eating out and making these extravagant dinners.
Target is such a money pit, isn't it? I love Target. Nothing against Target. Not like that big corporation is really worried about my little show, but I can't go in there without spending. It seems like a couple $100s.
I know, because everything is so stinking cute, right? So, So I walk in and that was always a thing for me. I go to Target like multiple times a week to grab one thing and end up coming out spending $200. Right? So I'm like, everybody can relate to that right now. Target.
Yep.
And so for me, it was like I had to really realign how I was spending my money to align with my value system and now start spending money as a reflection of those values instead of the opposite. So that was step number one for me.
Okay. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
How many steps are there? I don't want to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. I have lots of steps, but
I bet you do.
The most important step was the value system. I had to realize, what am I chasing and what are my values, and then spend my money as a reflection of that.
And so was the Audi part of your value system, or what happened to the car?
No, actually, we sold our Audi and bought a minivan.
Look at that.
Yep.
You really overhauled.
We really did overhaul. We actually got so brave as to sell our custom built house, and we ended up moving into like a little tiny rental townhouse that, literally it was so small. We came from like a 3,200 square foot house into a 700 square foot townhouse. And we sold everything that we owned because we were just so sick and tired of being broke all the time. And I had just had a complete overhaul with what I, knew and felt was valuable to me, that I just was like, I want to get rid of all this stuff because I don't want to be around stuff anymore.
Isn't it funny? Having stuff seems to beget more spending on stuff, like repairing it, cleaning it, keeping it up.
Right.
It's funny because it doesn't fill the hole. It just becomes more stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then you need new throw pillows for the new couch. And
obviously
at Target, because that's where you get them because they're so cute. But
so how do you go from 3,500 square feet?
Yeah.
To 700 with multiple kids. And this is a two-part question. Why did you choose to do that, given a lot of people would say mortgage is good debt?
Right. So the thing with us is we wanted to make sure that the next house purchase that we made was going to be our forever home. We didn't want to during this time, we also had a job change where my husband was going to lose his job. And thankfully, he got, on top of the $40,000 worth of debt, he was going to lose his job. We found that out. And then, so he thankfully got his old job back. At this time, we were living in South Carolina. He got his old job back in New York, which is where we're from. So we moved back to New York. And instead of buying a house sight unseen or, doing crazy things like that, we decided to rent this teeny tiny townhouse to save up the money to pay down debt. So we were just like aggressively paying down debt, like thousands of dollars a month, with being able to move into this tiny townhouse. Because I think the rent was $900 a month, and that included all the utilities and the water. So we didn't have to pay like anything else. Coming from our mortgage of $2,000 plus the utilities and all of that, we were able to really see and use like almost $2,000 a month to pay down this debt.
So that was one of the major ways that you went from being in the red to being in the black on a cash flow basis.
Right, exactly. So we really focused on that. And then we started saving up money to make a big down payment on a house that we were going to stay in forever. And we opted to go for a smaller house that was simpler, that we could really, stay in and enjoy ourselves. And so we bought that house. We were in the townhouse for a year, and then we bought the house that we're still currently in.
Wow. Big choices. I mean,
yeah.
I never say this to people when they start any of my programs, but a lot of people who choose financial coaching actually end up moving. Like I said, I never say that to them when the thing begins, because, it would just be way too much for them to bite off. But when a lot of people look at what they're spending, it's like your two biggest expenses are probably your car and your house. Or if you live in, Manhattan, it's transportation in your house.
Yep, that's so true.
Very good. And your husband is, we went through a little bit of time here, but he lost his job. Then he got an old job back. So he's working at this point.
Right. Yep. And he is an actuary. So he is a numbers guy.
Yeah.
And so, you can imagine an actuary who deals with money and numbers all day being in this much debt. It was kind of like humiliating for him because his wife had gotten him into the debt.
Would you just tell people what an actuary does?
Oh, gosh, it's like so complicated. I mean, I could tell you what they do and what they think. Like what they do is they sit usually behind a computer all day, but at that computer, they have massive spreadsheets. A lot of times they work for insurance companies to figure out, they develop rates for what people's automobile or insurance policies need to cost based on mortality tables and all this stuff. It's like all this numbers. So they're big numbers people.
Yes.
They're brilliant. And it takes a lot of schooling and testing to get their actuarial degree. So he had been through like 8 or 9 years of testing and all of that. So he's pretty brilliant.
So there you are. Are you back in New York at this point? When do you take on teaching and writing about debt?
Yeah. So we were back in New York about a year. Actually, no, I started teaching about debt. And, one of the big things that we did to get out of debt was learn how to drastically save on our grocery bill. So one of the things that we did is we cut our grocery bill down from $1,000 a month down to $200 a month. And I fed us for $50 a week for about 3 years. Oh. And yes, that was like a big thing for me, like learning how to coupon and meal plan. And I just said, I could spend the money on food, but I would rather pay down debt. So let's just learn how to eat really simple. And so we did that. We learned how to cut our grocery bill back a lot.
I'm sure you've written about that a lot, but would you just give us the high level on how you cut your grocery bill 80%?
Yeah. So big thing is anything that was a toiletry or anything like that, I got for free using coupons. That I learned how to do that. And then I would do a lot of freezer cooking and meal planning. So I teach that on my website now, how to, make 20 meals for $150 that are freezer meals and go right in the freezer. So, any busy mom can relate to not having enough time to plan out your dinners, right? So that's one thing. And then I just really learned how to strategically shop the grocery stores and put some time into it. I saw it as an hourly wage, instead of going out to work at a minimum wage job, I decided to stay at home and save money instead. So I always looked at it as an hourly wage. Whereas if I could sit down and plan, really plan and stock up on deals and spend about 2 to 3 hours a week, if I were to save $100 that week on groceries, then I was just making $50 an hour. So I always tried to like challenge myself on how much money I could make by couponing or meal planning. And to me, it was better than going out and getting a part-time job where I was making money and then paying taxes on those earnings. This was kind of a tax-free way for me to make money at home.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, really great. I mean, that number is impressive. Saving 80% on your grocery bill, that's impressive. So I wanted to ask into that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So do you think that you were more of an overspender or an under-earner? And I guess at this point, if you're not working, obviously that question might be answered for you. But where do you see these money problems came from? What are the source of them in your life, do you think?
Yeah, I think a few different ways that it came. I kind of grew up always liking new things. I was raised in Saratoga Springs, New York, which is an upper middle class city. You know, I had friends with elevators in their homes and gorgeous, expensive tastes everywhere, it seems like. So at an early age, I really valued those things growing up. And then, you know, once I learned and got credit cards like really early on in life, I think my freshman year of college was when I got my first credit card. I really didn't have the financial education behind me to know how to use those credit cards wisely. I remember growing up, my parents would often, you know, we would do these shopping trips where we would have what my mom would call sick days from school, where we would skip school altogether and me and my sisters and her would go shopping all day and go out to lunch and get pedicures and everything. But then the next day I would find her doing her budget and she'd be all stressed out and yelling at me that money doesn't grow on trees. So like I didn't have really much formal education on like, here's a credit card. This is what you do. Now, I think that a lot of times people are born to be a certain way with certain skills. They're born to be impulsive or optimistic. And I find that a lot of people that are spenders are actually they're risk takers too. So a lot of people that are spenders are also really good investors because they take a lot of risks with their investors because they don't let money hold them back from life. And so that was the way I was. I was always impulsive. I love to do fun things and I don't want anybody to, you know, take back my life, I guess. I don't let money hold me back. So that's good in one way, but then in another way, it got me into a lot of debt because I didn't think about the decisions and the purchases I was making.
And so in terms of being a risk taker, you're self-identifying as a risk taker, imagining just from what you've told me about your husband that he maybe doesn't identify the same way.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
He plays it very safe.
So how are things going between the two of you as you're paying things off and you're taking more risks? How are you navigating that?
Yeah. So that's a really good question because I think a lot of times in a relationship, you know, opposites attract. And so for me, I'm a risk taker. I'm a big thinker. I'm impulsive. He likes to sleep on every decision. It takes him a long time to make a decision. When he makes a decision, it's really conservative. A lot of times he's fearful about making big decisions. And so when it comes to us working together, we actually do very well together because we work together as a team. It's not Mark versus Lauren. It's our family as a team. And so how it looks like on a day-to-day, he quit his job 2.5 years ago to come home and work with me on our website and our business. And so that was like unlike him to do that. Totally quit his $100,000 a year job to come home and work with me. Like it was crazy. But for us, it was worth it as a family. And we've since been able to make up that income through my business. But for him, he is very good at the numbers. So if we sit down and we decide, we're working through a project or we're working on our budget together, our business budget or our personal budget, he sits down and he's really good at figuring out the numbers. So he has, the computer open and he's working through our spreadsheets and figuring out the numbers and figuring out cost per click on ads that we're doing, but also helping us figure out, personal finances and all that kind of stuff. And then I use my spending skills now to be the one in the family that spends the money, but spends it wisely. So I do all of our grocery shopping. I do all of our media for the business. So I'm out in front of people and I'm having to book flights and do all these television appearances. And then I also know what to buy for gifts for people and how to run the household efficiently. So our skills are really complementary to each other, but we just had to learn how to use them together so that we weren't fighting all the time.
It's great. You guys sound like a very constructive, couple. It's good.
Yeah.
Did either of you discover or illuminate any superstitions about money, things that you used to think were true that you either now no longer subscribe to, or you had to even bust through as an assertion or a superstition?
Yeah, I think for me, I started really understanding, money, obviously money doesn't grow on trees, but I acted like it did for a while. But when I started seeing, I never knew what compound interest was or any of those kind of things, or, how investing could really help us. Those were all things that I kind of had to learn along the process. And Mark has always been very good with learning how to save and invest. But for me, it was all kind of brand new information. So I started changing the way that I thought, instead of a mentality of being stuck and being depleted with my finances, to an abundance mentality of like investing and saving and seeing my money grow. And so that was a big thing for me to learn. As a spender, I love to spend all of our money, but I'm not just spending money, I'm actually losing money when I'm making those purchases. And so, because I can't invest it. And so that was like a big turning point for me through this process to learn those kind of skills as well.
Awesome. What about for Mark? Can you speak for him? Or I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think for Mark, he really had to learn that, especially running a business together, that you have to take financial risks and investments in order to make more money. And that was really, really hard for him because, like I said, he would rather sit and be really conservative with our money. And so it was hard for him at first to be able to invest money that we weren't sure we were going to get back. But he's had to learn to be a little bit more trusting of his gut. And that's really helped him with investments and also just in our business to be able to make those big risks to make extra money.
Struggle really produces growth, doesn't it?
It really does. Yep.
Yes. So you have not only, how long did it take you to pay off the debt?
2 years.
Took you 2 years to pay off the debt, and you became a fully entrepreneurial household, and you have done a lot of media and a lot of publishing. What do you think is the thing you've done that produced the most results? Oh,
I think that the thing that's produced the most results has been sharing my personal struggle through my website, LaurenGreutman.com. That's how I got the book deal. That's how I got the television. That didn't come before the website. I think what I've done really well is taken my story and my struggles and really been able to share it in a way that's relatable to other people. And I think anybody can relate to the feelings that I share in my book and in my podcast and, in my, on my website. That I think has been the central glue of holding the business together. And then all the other little side things that I do, all point back to that main hub of the website.
What's been the most surprising thing that you learned along the way?
Ooh, for entrepreneurship or getting out of debt?
About money.
Okay. The most surprising thing about money that I've learned.
It could be about entrepreneurship if it's right there for you too.
Yeah. I think the most surprise is that money isn't just money. Money represents the lifestyle that you want to live, where what you want to drive, what you want to wear, your relationships with people that, before I just saw money as a ways to get things that I want, but it really is kind of a reflection of how your values, like we talked about before, and where the things that are important to you are, that it's not just money, it's everything. It kind of encompasses everything in life. And for years, I didn't think that. I really thought it as just money. So now I see it as a means to get, to enhance my future, to be able to do the things that I want to do with my family, but yet still remain debt free. And that's been really surprising to me.
I love that. All of us who have been to our own financial rock bottom I kind of refer to it as a spirituality about money.
Yep.
Like it is not just money. So I think you put that really well. And so let's talk about budgets and paying off debt. Speaking about this book that's coming out, what do you think goes wrong with most people's spending plans?
Well, I think that people don't plan enough or don't plan accordingly. So I think a lot of times people set this budget or, whatever the spending plan, whatever you want to call it, and they set it up and they just set it on autopilot, right? So, and then it should just go month after month after month. But I find that things come up every month and I need to set a budget for every month individually. So I think a lot of people don't do that. They don't budget for every single month. I mean, for me, I have oh gosh, how many nieces and nephews? I think I have 18 nieces and nephews under the age of 10. I mean,
oh my goodness,
there's a ton of them. So we have like 3 birthdays a month. So every month I need to be able to plan whose birthdays it is, what kind of gifts I have, what vacations we have, what, if we're going back to school, what school supplies we need. We have to plan that out all the time. And if I did one budget and just expected to stick to it every month, I would fail. And so for me, it's planning every single month differently and sitting down. We have what we call the budget night. So the last Sunday of every month, we sit down, Mark and I, and we plan our month out for the business and for the family. And it really helps us kind of stick to it and stay in communication together.
What do you say to someone who hears the word budget and their eyes roll back to the back of their head?
Well, there's either 2 reasons why. The number one reason is they're a spender and it makes them cringe on the inside, which is what used to happen to me. And then the second reason would be I make so much money, I don't need to budget, right? So I think there's 2 different reasons why somebody would roll their eyes. And for both, I think it's the same thing, is that you have to realize that, if you don't tell your money to go, you're going to overspend it. And if you value your money, then I would say let's spend it wisely. Even if you have a lot of money or a little money, you still need to budget and tell your money to go so that you make the most out of it. And I think that's what I would say to somebody is, by not doing anything and not doing a budget, you're making a choice to not have control of your money that month. And so by having a budget, it just helps you have control of your money and tell it where to go.
And so do you practice, by the way, it's just a sidebar, there are people who naturally underspend, by the way. They're rare.
They're rare, but they are there. You're right.
They exist. So do you practice the bucket or envelope method, or do you have a dense spreadsheet, or do you use YNAB? How do you do it?
Yeah, so we actually have an online course called the Financial Renovation. And inside that course, we developed budgeting tools ourselves. So
oh, great.
Easy drag and drop budget tools. It's an online system. So we use that. I use cash for a lot of things, but I'm a kind of a paper person. So I use a planner called the Personal Finance Planner, which is something that we developed a couple months ago. So it's like a planner that's also a budget tool, like a paper planner. So I use that personally to keep track. And yeah, so Mark does have spreadsheets, but I don't use them because that's not how I operate. I just like the paper.
This book is called The Recovering Spender. Said kind of like people might call themselves a recovering alcoholic. Do you think you'll always be a spender? Is that why the title is what the title is?
Yeah, it's not the recovered spender for a reason, right? So I think that I just had to realize that I have a natural tendency to spend money because I like spending money. I mean, like I said in the beginning, I don't see money as a hindrance. I see it as a tool, and I don't like letting money dictate how I live my life. But that being said, that there's certain things that I want to do, which is have the retirement, have, nice vacations, have the kids go to college, that I really invest in those things. And I would rather do those than blow all my money at Target or Hobby Lobby. And so for me, I have to choose, where to put my money. And if I go into Target or Hobby Lobby, despite having all of these other goals, a lot of times I get sucked into the ambiance or whatever, the beauty of the stores. And so I still struggle. If I go into a store, I have to know my boundaries. But if I don't budget, I'm like, a kid in a candy store. I just want everything. So it's really important for me to budget and stick to it. And it really helps keep my spending under control.
So as an aspiring author in the financial space, and you have authored several other books, and we'll link to those in the show notes for this episode. By the way, Lauren will talk more about some of the things she's offering about the book that's launching now in a few minutes. But if you want to find out more about Lauren, just go to hillaryhendershot.com/38. So Lauren, as an aspiring author in the financial space, the one thing that is almost universally said about money is that it's probably already been written. Like there's nothing new under the sun. And ultimately budgeting is just spending less than you make. Yet you have the courage to write and share your story about getting into and out of debt, which frankly is the situation for millions of people. I mean, it seems like this unending process of people coming into their mid-20s and getting into debt and then discovering this entire world of recovered spenders just like you. What makes this book different?
I think exactly what you said that makes this book different is that there are so many financial books out there, And they speak a lot of times to the people that love money, the people that want to, do better with money. But there's never been a book that has been written by a spender to a spender, because I think that we speak a different language. We're the black sheep in the finance world when it comes to money. We sit in the back of the class with our heads hung low, thinking that we're just never going to do well. I mean, I'm not talking about spending.
People like to shame spenders.
Exactly. They like to shame us. They like to yell at us and say, you just need to stop spending money. But when we talked about earlier that money isn't just about money, it's about a lot of other things. And so it's too simplistic to just say, spend less than what you're making, because there's so much more underneath all of that spending. And I've been there, and I know, it's not just about money to spenders. It's about security. It's about fun. It's about, keeping up with the Joneses and appearances and feeling like they're not enough. There's so much more that goes into it. And I have yet to read a book like mine that makes a spender feel like they can do this. I've been able to give out a bunch of pre-release copies, and the response that I'm getting is, I've never read a finance book that I like to read, or how did you get those words that were in my head and put them down on paper? And so spenders are really relating to this finance book in a way that I don't think that they ever have to a finance book before.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So the book is titled The Recovering Spender, How to Live a Happy, Fulfilled, Debt-Free Life. Did I get that right?
Yep, you got that right.
Okay, so that's a really bold promise.
Yeah.
So what are the top tips you want to share with my audience for them to disconnect spending from happiness and experience fulfillment now?
Yeah, I think we talked about things like defining your values, but another thing, decluttering your life to regain your joy again. A lot of times people surround themselves with all of this stuff, and the stuff is actually, sucking them dry of all of their joy. And so one of the chapters that I talk about is how to declutter your life to regain your joy, and ways to make money from the things in your house, but also just how to, properly clean your life up and your finances up so that you have that joy and freedom again. I talk about ways to organize your finances in a way that makes sense. And a lot of, the second half of the book is broken down almost, like I said, as a 12-step process. So we talk about how to set up a proper budget as a spender. We talk about how to pay off your debts in the best way. So this is kind of like a beginner, if you've failed at budgeting in the past and never been able to stick with it, it would be a great book for you. But it also would be a great book for anybody that works with people that are spenders, so that they can understand how to help them. Because it's, for a spender, if you've ever wondered, can't you just stop spending money? It's not that easy. And so I think this would be a great read for somebody like that as well.
That's really great. So some of the things we've talked about, reducing your grocery bill by 80%, and actually how to do that, like actual tactics. For that, go to laurengreutman.com or just go to hillaryhendershot.com/38. But if folks want to get a copy of this book, what do you want them to do?
Yeah, they can go to laurengreutman.com. They can also go to the recoveringspender.com. That kind of has a few videos about the book, including a spendervention, which we did. Before the book came out, I went and did a documentary using the principles from the book on a family and walking them through 3 months of my process. And so you can watch those videos on the recoveringspender.com, but it's on,
Ooh, that's like a reality show.
Yeah. It's like a little mini reality show.
That's hot.
Yeah. So we did that. And then they can, order the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's wherever books are sold, and check it out.
That's awesome, Lauren. Thank you so much for sharing so openly with my audience. I'm excited about what you're doing and hope to stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Hillary.
If you liked this episode, I'm inviting you to join us today in the free private Profit Boss community on Facebook. You don't have to know a super secret password or handshake, but you will benefit from a warm, encouraging, and confidential community who are all there to grow and learn from each other. It's an awesome opportunity to create a classroom out of what you learn here on Profit Boss Radio and in life, and get feedback from how others in the Profit Boss community are achieving financial independence. Some of the really valuable discussions we've had recently in the Facebook group are how to make sure tax time goes super smoothly for you with no stress, what tools people are using to track their spending and make sure they're achieving their financial goals, and also what resources people are using to master their money mind. So plug in and take advantage of the collective wisdom from your fellow profit bosses. Crowdsource the answers to your most important financial questions in a confidential and supportive environment. Just go to hillaryhendershot.com/profitboss. That's hillaryhendershot.com/profitboss. And that link redirects you to a Facebook group. Just request membership and we'll let you right in. It's free, it's cool, it's awesome, it's supportive. We'll see you there.
Thank you for listening to Profit Boss Radio, where creating success on our own terms happens every day. You're not alone in your journey to a rich life, and that's why Hillary is here to add value in each and every episode. See you next time on the podcast for women and money.